Hello, folks, and welcome to This Week in History with Mike and Will. I'm Mike.
I'm Will.
And it's This Week in History,
Yes.
where we discuss an event or a person that took place or was from this week at some point in history. Will does the research on it and then tells me all about it.
Yep.
And he's got 1 hour to do that.
This many.
And today we are talking about Gustav Adolphus.
Gustavus Adolphus. It is Gustav Adolf, but also Gustavus Adolphus. That's a fancy way of saying
Adolphus.
I think the fancier you get, they start to Greekify your name.
Sure.
Yeah.
All right.
Before we go, I have a well actually from last week.
Okay.
We were talking about the Winter War, and I mentioned Stalin's kind of hierarchy, his close guys, and I referred to one guy as Brezhnev, and it was Lavrenti Beria was the guy with the lists. And in The Death of Stalin, he's just a fantastically portrayed villain of he's just amazing. He's this little round guy who's kind of this. He's like the Russian Winston Churchill looking type guy. Okay. And he's got these lists of who goes to the gulag, and he's a stone cold evil guy. It's fantastically portrayed. I should have remembered the actor's name, but it doesn't matter. Go watch the movie.
Way more information than we need.
That's way more information, but it was Lavrenti Beria. I wanted to get that right because I didn't want to make somebody else.
Sure.
Some poor guy.
On behalf of the Brezhnev family,
I am sorry. Nobody called me out on it. I just wanted to make sure I got the name right. Also, we're in a hat today because we're doing. Last week we did Finland. Mm-hmm. This week we're talking about Sweden. Okay. And my mom's family is Swedish and Finnish, and my mom made this hat. Plus, it's festive.
That's nice.
My festive long-tailed.
Yeah, we're all festive right now.
Festive. We're festive. We got our tree.
Looking festive.
Festive colors. You've been
ready?
Doing Santa. Yeah, I'm ready.
Well, now we're telling me about Gustavus Adolphus.
Hey, Gustavus Adolphus. We're today celebrating his birthday.
Happy birthday, Goose.
Yep, it was the 9th of December, 1594. So he is dead by now. So we can posthumously wish him a happy birthday because he died hundreds of years ago. But we're going to start by explaining that he is a king of Sweden.
King of Sweden.
King of Sweden. So
born that way?
Born, no, not that way. He was born the son of a duke. Mm-hmm. So close. His father, Charles IX, and his mother was Christina from, I think, Hohenstein, which is a German place. Okay. Charles was the brother of the previous king. Okay. So that's like typically it's a duke is the brother of a king. That's like how it's often portrayed, or just really, really powerful. That's how I was always like taught it when I was a little kid. It's like, well, there's the king, and if you're his brother, you're a duke. All right. Okay. That's not always the case because in some places they're just like, no, that's the king, or in other places they're like, no, that's just a really, really powerful noble. So it's not always the rule, but in this, it actually sticks with the old, like movie rule of if it's a duke, brother.
You'd hope you were somebody.
Yeah, well, you got to be a big landowner to be a duke. You can't just be like, I'm the duke.
No, I mean if you were related to the king, you'd hope.
You get a title. Totally, yeah. You definitely get a title. Usually just that, and then depending on your quality, if you're like a smart guy, then you're put in charge of like administrative work. You're given responsibilities. Sure. Okay. But Charles IX was the Duke of Södermanland, which is in Sweden. Södermanland. And his brother was King John III. King John was kind of a mover and shaker, powerful guy, as kings would be. And this is during the middle of like the Protestant Reformation. This is when countries are starting to kind of define their national identity based on Protestant or Catholic, and this is very much a battle of ideology between the Catholic old way of running things, where that's the traditional way things work, and then Protestantism is oftentimes tied in with a more formal education, going to university. Although the Catholics do have their universities as well, they're just oftentimes run by the Jesuits. Okay. So a lot of these more free thinking is what they would describe themselves. Not to say Catholics are anti-free thought and that all Protestants are super free thought, because even the founder of Lutheranism was a raging anti-Semite. Okay. So just because you're on one side of the divide doesn't mean you're always progressive or always regressive.
If you're Yeah, or if you're learned or book learned, it doesn't necessarily mean you're
better.
Morally better.
Morally better, right. You might have, like, you can read, but you might be a monster. Some of these guys are, oh, yes, I'm very progressive. I just burned down 6 villages and killed 300 people. Wonderful. Aha.
All praise the
Go
Lord.
to Jesus. Yay. Why did you kill them? Well, they worship the wrong God. Well, aren't they Catholic? Well, it's the same God, but it's different, you see. So, had to die.
Are these Swedish accents?
No.
Thought I had a stroke. All right.
No, today we get to bust out our Swedish chef.
Perfect.
We're in Sweden, so we've got Gustavus
Adolphus.
His father, Charles the 9th. I think it would probably be not pronounced Charles in Swedish.
Chuck.
Chuck.
They're real close to right across the river, the water from Germany, though. Must be, right?
Yep, they're close. So there's the Baltic Sea. Yeah. We can do a picture of the region right here. Boink. So we have traditionally we have Norway, and then it goes Sweden, and then Finland eventually. But right now Finland is part of Sweden. Okay, so Sweden's huge. This is a very large chunk of land. It's not Russia huge, but it's real big.
Yeah.
And then they're next door neighbors to Russia. At this point in time, Latvia, Lithuania, Estonia, those are parts of other countries, specifically Poland, which will feature in our story today.
Ooh, okay.
Because it is a region called Livonia. It's like a big chunk of land within Poland. Okay. So we're gonna get back to that. But so Charles is he's the Duke of Södermanland, and his brother John died and left the kingdom to his son. It's another Sigismund. Sigismund III. We talk about a lot of Sigismunds.
Sure.
So Sigismund III.
Surprised that name hasn't really carried on. I have not met a Sigismund.
It's a great name. I mean, but it's shortened to Siggy.
Siggy, yeah.
And that's less cool.
Okay.
Siggy.
Ziggy's cool, though.
Ziggy Stardust. There's one cool Ziggy.
I knew a guy named Ziggy.
Yeah? Was he cool?
Yeah.
Was he Ziggy Stardust cool?
No, he was from Poland. Okay. No, Ukraine? He's from the Ukraine.
Oh, Ukraine's right next to Poland.
Anyway, go on.
Regionally close. There you go. You're near there. Now, this was a problem that Sigismund became king for Charles. Charles has an issue with this because Sweden is very Protestant. It is part of this newly rising up. This is very common in like the Nordic, Teutonic countries, we'd call them. So that's Sweden and Sweden and Norway, Denmark, Germany. These are centers for Protestantism. And for this guy, Sigismund, to be not just Catholic, he's a zealot. Like purge the infidel kind of Catholic. Like old school. Like this is not going to work well with what Sweden is trying to accomplish, considering almost everybody in Sweden is Protestant. They also are pretty open to like free practice, so you can be a Catholic, that's fine, but the Catholic Church doesn't run the country. If Sigismund is running it, he's going to flip that. Also, Sigismund is Polish because of his father and his mother. It's a very complicated family tradition.
I don't want to derail this whole thing, but I have a question about religion and running a country.
Far away.
So
I might have an answer.
Well, so does it matter to like now? Do leaders of country be like, we want one religion? Why? So that we're right and God favors us, or is it one religion so that we have control over the people?
That one.
Yeah, probably.
That one. 100% that one.
Makes you question why we have religion.
Historically, every time that a major religion is featured in anything, is all about control. See, there's that difference between faith and religion that we talk a lot about. Faith's wonderful. You worship God, and typically it makes you live a good life and be kind to others. Especially Christianity is like rooted in Jesus is the big the reformer who's like, so don't go killing each other, don't go doing this, don't do that, be nice. And they're like, well, do we have any like really strict rules? Do we have to eat anything? No. Just be chill, be nice, be kind, give, be generous. That's wonderful. Here's 70,000 parables and stories that you can base your life on that even if you're not a Christian, you can look at and go, huh. Like even Muslims look at Jesus and go, yeah, that was a good dude. That was a prophet.
Sure.
I don't know if they see him as specifically a prophet, but for sure a good man. Jews see him as like a prophet or at least a really good man. They're like, do that thing. That thing that he did. That's good. Buddhists look at it and go, that's what we've been talking about. Like everybody's like, be chill. And then they just go into religious warfare and genocide because of organized religion where you have systems of control.
Yeah.
And that is really, from studying history, we see all organized religion, not faith, not your individual religious faiths, but the actual power structure is 100% about control. And there's always fighting, there's oppression, and it doesn't matter what faith you are. Anytime you put a mandatory faith in charge of something, or an absence of faith, because we have seen moments where atheism is mandatory. And if you are not an atheist, you are oppressed horribly as well. That's not a religious belief, but it is so counter to faith. It's also an organization at that point. That's a systemic control point, right?
Right.
So, yes.
Good.
If you are a king, you're using your church, your religion, to control people. The Catholic Church at this point has a much better system of control. It's been around a lot longer, so they have all the power base built up. You know, you've got clerics and vicars. Well, they don't have vicars, but they have clerics and priests and monks and abbeys. Then they have the bishops that control wide swaths of territory. Then they have the cardinals, who have even more land, and then the Pope. So, yeah.
All right.
Protestants a little more freewheeling.
All right. Well, Merry Christmas, everyone.
Merry Christmas, everybody.
All right. Move on with
You can still have Christmas.
Gustavus.
But so yes. So but that's a really good question, because that is why Charles is opposed to this. Because suddenly Sigismund could come into power and completely pull the rug out from everybody and flip the power base. You've got all these people who are thinking, yeah, this is fine and we're doing this. And we've seen in other places, just recently in England for them, we had Bloody Mary, who put Protestants to the sword. And then we had Elizabeth, who had some problems with Catholics. And we had Henry, and we had a lot of violence in England over this. The Spanish Inquisition isn't too far before it either, though, so that's the Catholics doing horrible things. Sweden's kind of got a grip on this, and they don't want it to change.
Okay.
They're like, nope, it's Protestant dominated. As long as we have a Protestant king, we'll be more chill about things, and the church won't control things. There's also this paranoia. The Catholics, if they come back, will take power, and they'll kill us. Yeah. So Charles is freaked out about this.
Why wouldn't they? You did it to them.
Well, yeah, but also throughout, the Catholics are they're doing a counter-reformation. This is the height of the counter-reformation as well, where when they come back with force, and they do a lot of killing. And also, they have a lot more history. The Catholics have the Crusades and the Inquisition. The Protestants have some bad stuff, but it doesn't quite level up with the genocide.
Okay. Well, they'll get there.
They'll get there. They're working on it. They're working on it because we're about to hit the 30 Years' War, and that's where we start to even out the numbers.
I'll put some numbers on the board.
Finally, we're scoring. Yes. All the while we've been doing these little 30-person massacres. We got to get up there with the big numbers, thousands and tens of thousands. All right. So Charles is understandably concerned that this is going to switch the way things established, like precedent. Also, Sigismund rules in Poland. At this time, Sweden and Poland are united under one king. He stays in Poland. So he doesn't have anything to do with Sweden.
Yeah, that sounds like bad plan.
Yeah, and this is not...
Hard to control a country when you're not there.
Yeah, you can't just make a phone call. Poland's huge. And it's Poland-Lithuania. So it's all of the huge territory that Lithuania was and all of the huge territory that Poland already was combined into this massive country. It's huge. And Sweden's kind of pushed up into the corner and ignored about it. It's not as wealthy. It's not as fertile. It's colder. So their concern is, well, you're not even here, so you're not even going to run the place. And you're going to force Catholicism back on us. We don't like this.
Good luck, buddy.
So Charles immediately, once his nephew takes over, Sigismund is his brother's nephew, he and other statesmen are opposed to this. Like, they're immediately like, this, we got it. Nope. We're going to split. We're going to depose him as king. He can have Poland. We don't want Poland, but we're going to depose him as king of Sweden. And then we're just going to self-rule.
So we're leaving.
We're leaving.
What do you call
on a jet plane.
No, what do you call that?
Don't move in, I'll be back again.
Leave the country.
Yes. No, they're not leaving, but he's leaving.
No, the country's leaving.
Yeah.
We call that when you separate a country.
Rebellion. Secession.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, it's a seceding.
Yeah,
They're
right.
seceding. Well, I mean, they're really just going, okay, no, you're already out of the country, so we just
it's
shut
an
the
easy
door
one.
behind you.
Seceding can be easy. I
Yeah.
guess.
I'm kind of getting that. Well, now you're back. Now go.
Okay.
Go down the door. I can't sing that well. I can't sing that high.
That's lovely.
But
That's lovely.
yeah. So they want him to just go away and stay there. You're in Poland and you're happy. Stay in Poland and be happy.
Yeah.
Well, Sigismund doesn't like this. He likes the idea of empire. He's like, yeah, I got huge countries.
Yeah.
I'm gonna make everybody Catholic. He starts fighting the Ottomans,
Uh-oh.
which is never great. The Ottomans are huge. He beats the Ottomans largely. He does very well against the Ottomans.
Yeah.
He starts looking at Russia because it's kind of Sweden and Poland are here, and then Russia's right there. So they're like, well, we'll conquer that as well, and I will make a huge my country. We
And
call
that-
it Sigland.
And that obviously worked. And
Yeah,
so here
and
we
that's
are.
the end. And then so we don't even have to talk about Gustavus because he doesn't even enter into it.
Oh, we haven't talked about Gustavus
We haven't
yet.
talked about Gustavus yet. So Charles immediately he's going into this power struggle with Sigismund. Unfortunately for Gustavus, he's born into this power struggle, 1594. Now this is going on from like the 1580s onwards, and they don't actually separate Sweden from Poland until 1610.
Oh,
So
okay.
during Gustavus's lifetime, he's just the son of a duke. So he's still a very powerful young man, but he's not a king in the making. His dad is not the king. His dad's brother was the king. So he's adjacent to greatness.
Right.
His grandfather was a king.
Oh, what's he
kind of
going to do? What's he
So
going to
he's-
do?
So Charles is vying for all of this stuff, and there's not like open warfare constantly, but there are skirmishes, there's border feuds, there's a few hundred troop engagements kind of a thing. They don't have to physically remove Sigismund from the country because he's not even there. So basically they just start running the country without him.
Oh, yeah.
And then they make Charles the king because
that-
he's the closest king.
That'd be the best way to.
And it
do
works.
Yeah.
It works, we're finding out, for Sweden. Because when Charles dies, he's only into his reign for a year. But he's older, and he gets sick, and he dies.
Oh, sorry, Charles.
Because you lived to be like 50 back then.
We barely knew you.
Charles, we barely knew you. Gustavus is crowned on the 12th of October in 1617. So he is not very old at this point. No, I wrote the numbers down wrong because he's 17 when he gets it. He's 1611. Sorry, 1611. I don't know why I wrote 17.
Okay.
So he's like 16 and almost 17.
Okay.
He doesn't get to actually
I
rule.
am 16, going on 7.
And when he's 17, he gets a country.
Oh, that's the nice birthday present.
So actually, so from 12 October to 16 December, it's kind of this weird, like the regents are running things.
Yeah.
But then in December, he's fully given his power. And he sets himself up to be a very different kind of king from the get-go. I downloaded a thingy, his speech. So he did a little bit of a speech to try to explain.
Speech.
So typically when you do, when you become king, you give a speech, and it's kind of it's not a State of the Union, it's this is gonna be the State of the Union, and
Yeah.
people can kind of get a sense of, oh God, what kind of king is he gonna be? Like you can walk
Yeah.
up and be like, first and foremost, we kill everybody I don't like. Because the
Yay.
English tend, I feel like I always do English because I feel like the English did that a lot. Like
Yeah.
Edward the Longshank shows up, he's like, well, the first thing we're doing is killing Scotland. Oh God.
Well, you want to make a good first impression.
You do. So what Gustavus does is, and he's young, he comes up and he says, inasmuch as God had let me be born a prince, such as I then am born, then my good and my destruction were knotted into one with the common good. So he's saying, I'm tied in with the people. Like this is just I was born to this.
Yeah.
For every reason then, it was now my promise that I should take great pains about their well-being and good government and management, and thereabout bear close concern. So he immediately comes in saying, I got born into this position. I
Yeah.
have a huge amount of responsibility, and I take it very seriously. He doesn't say that I'm going to go and punch everybody in the face, and he doesn't say he's going to put down these people or oppress those people. He says
Okay.
it is my responsibility to the common good to rule well and to learn. So he immediately he latches himself onto good advisors, good counsel,
He seems like a very reasonable guy.
and he unfortunately though he becomes king and the country's in 3 wars at the same time.
Well,
So the first thing he has to do is fight wars. Now, the craziest thing is he's only 17. He's been on campaign with his father throughout his entire life.
oh, okay. So he
Because his
knows.
dad's been, so he's like born with a gun in his hand and
Yeah.
a sword in the eye. Like, let's do this. I'm in diapers, but I have a gun.
Okay, I do the
Pew.
fighting.
And a little hat to keep me
Yeah.
warm.
But now he's king, so okay.
So now, okay,
Let's wrap these wars up.
let's wrap this war up. But some of them is not going to get wrapped up.
It is
very
hard to wrap up a war.
It's really hard to do that. But especially since if you're in the midst of a war and you find out your rival king died and he was the main threat, now you have some pup king, you're probably going to be motivated to prosecute that war a little harder. That was the case with one of them. So
Here we go.
his 3 wars are between Denmark and Norway. That's just one. Denmark,
one.
Norway is one country.
Okay.
The situation with Poland and
The situation with both.
Lithuania,
Okay.
so that's a family dynastic struggle, and there's a war in Russia.
Ah.
So that's literally all his borders.
That's every- yeah,
That's
that's
every direction.
I guess he could fight against the North Pole.
Yeah, he could. Santa's gonna be pissed.
Merry Christmas again.
And we just watched Violent Night, so we know you
true.
do not
Don't
mess with Santa. That's a terrible idea. You're gonna get a lump of coal.
At least.
At least you're gonna get your lumps. So the first thing he has to deal with is the war in Norway. Norway, this is a stupid war.
Oh.
His dad started this.
Ugh. I don't even want to do this war.
Charles wanted to control. So there's a robust sea trade in the Baltic. There's
Yeah.
a huge amount of commerce going between Germany and Denmark and Norway and Sweden, but also they go out to England, and then they also go to France, and then Denmark is just this peninsula, so it has a massive fishing fleet, and then the fishing is very good apparently in the Baltic. It's not too wild. It's much calmer than like the North Sea by England. It's great for all of this stuff.
Yeah.
You also have trade coming from Russia.
It's a lutefisk.
Yeah, and the lutefisk is a thing that
Yeah.
they talked about too. They're like the lutefisk trade was important. So,
okay.
Charles wants his piece of this, and he basically says, "Well, I'm gonna tax these people. I'm gonna tax the trade and the fishermen."
Charles the now dead.
Charles is now dead.
Okay,
So this is
all
while Charles is alive. He says, "I'm gonna tax these people."
Flashback. I'm sorry. There's a flashback.
So King Christian IV, who is like the greatest king in Danish history, he ruled for 56 years, I think,
Okay.
which is insane.
It's a long time, yeah.
And he's like good King Christian, like he was, and he was actually a pretty darn good king. He sees this happening, he goes, "No, this is my land. You can't tax my." Then I'm taxing them twice, and that's no. What do you? No.
Okay.
That'd be like coming to your house and just taking your television. You know, like
Yeah.
I'm just gonna eat your food and watch TV because it's mine.
Not on my watch.
Because I live 3 blocks away, so that of course means I own this, right? It's wild.
Yeah.
So Christian says this is garbage. He tries to like diplomatically solve it. Like, dude, you can't just
'Cause
tax
he's
my
a good,
people.
He's a good king.
You can't just like
Nice.
say, well, I'm gonna set up ships at
Yeah.
these
Yeah,
islands
it's like
and between
extortion
and
or
these
something.
atolls and just be like,
Yeah.
mine now.
That's like pirating, really.
It basically is piracy. Like, because if you don't give him the money, he just sinks your ship.
Yeah. That's piracy.
Yeah, it's piracy. I mean, it's kind of like
Like a state.
it's like the difference between like piracy and a navy and terrorism and an army. It's like the level of if the government does it,
Okay.
it's not piracy. If the government does it, it's not terrorism.
State-sponsored,
It's
piracy.
state-sponsored piracy. That
Perfect.
just is a naval action.
Okay. Oh, I see.
It's a naval action.
Got it.
Just like state-sponsored terrorism is a military action.
Yes,
It's
there we go.
action. You know,
It's
because
all
action.
about how you phrase things.
Arnold Schwarzenegger's involved. It's action.
There we
It's
go.
action is give me a toll.
People love a good action.
They do. You can forgive a lot. The semantics are very important in good governance. Like, you know, you can't do monstrous things and call it a monstrous thing. You have to call it something nice. Action.
Sure.
We like action. Steven Spielberg loves action.
Yeah.
Says it, and then he wins Oscars. Action. All right, so action. That's what's going on. And Christian says, this is crap. I'm not going to tolerate it. And in April of like 1610, he invades. He just attacks Sweden. He's like, I have tried everything.
Really?
And
So now this is still Charles in charge.
This is during Charles was in
in
charge.
charge.
This is Charles in charge. So this is one of Charles's
Yep.
wars. So
All right.
this is one that Gustavus.
But Gustavus is there. He's alive.
Gustavus is there, and he's like,
little.
these are our atolls and these are our islands, and we're going to fight. Yeah, that
okay, yeah.
no.
Well, now we're fighting.
I don't understand why we're fighting, but okay.
Okay.
I'm not in charge. I'm just here.
All right. So Denmark attacks, and what
Denmark
happens?
attacks. Well, it kind of is a border skirmish. It's not a huge war.
Yeah.
It's in Sweden. It's hard to move through there. It's cold, as we talked about, like at the Winter War and everything like that.
Yeah.
This is all the same region. It's not quite as bitter cold, and he does this in the spring, so he's not stupid. He doesn't go like, oh yeah, it's December. Let's go over there and fight.
Yeah.
Death. He's like, we'll wait till
We'll do
April.
it when it's nice.
When it's spring and everything's
it's
melting, but
spring.
now
Okay.
everything's melting, so it's all mud. Crap.
Yep. There's really no good time
It's
to
not
attack.
a good time. It's never a good time to attack any Nordic. It's really war is just a bad idea.
Yeah.
But especially in Nordic countries where the melt has just happened
Yeah, yeah.
and everything's mud and marsh.
Wait till July, I guess.
Yeah, I guess. But then you run chances of like fever from
Yeah.
mosquitoes in the bogs being nasty. There's really just no good time.
Okay.
You get like a 2-week window.
Can't schedule it.
Yeah. Can I pencil you in? Nah, that's no good for me. That's when I have typhus.
Yeah, what's the perfect day? Is that like in October? Like
No, I was thinking more September.
yeah, or mid-September.
You think it's September?
It's a little chilly, but not too cold.
It's not too cold.
Yeah.
That's a wedding season, though.
Yeah.
We'll have to reschedule.
Moving
You know
on.
what? Put the year off. So he has to. When Charles dies, they think maybe this will end the war, and Christian
Yeah.
goes, "No, their king is dead, and he was a tactical guy, and now I have an advantage because this kid doesn't know what he's doing. Invade." He
Ah.
immediately fights and takes 2 major fortresses on the border, and he's like, "Yeah, I got this." And Gustavus is like, "I'm gonna fight you," but he can never meet the army in the field, so he just starts raiding Norway. He destroys 24 settlements.
Wow.
To this day, Gustavus Adolphus is not remembered fondly in Norway
Oh.
because he put the fear of God into these people.
Right.
We didn't have anything to do, and he's stuck as this reactionary king.
Right. He didn't start it.
He
but
didn't
he's
start the
trying to finish
war.
it.
This guy invaded his land and then also refused peace with him. So he's like, well, fine, forget you. I'm just going to do what I can. You're not giving me battle, so go. Go unleash hell. This guy's going burn a bunch of stuff down. And they cause a bunch of problems. After this, Christian tries to push in towards Stockholm, Sweden, which is the capital. Also where Gustavus was born. The royal palace is there.
Don't come to my home.
Burn my house down.
It's my house.
But by the time he gets there, Gustavus employs scorched earth tactics and guerrilla warfare.
On his own country?
On his own country. He's just like, well, they don't kill their own people, but they're like,
Right.
everybody move back to the city.
Watch out.
And there's an army coming. Grab all your food and move back.
Okay.
Okay? This terrain is going to suck worse now because now they don't have any supplies. Also, Christian's army is largely funded, is mercenaries. Well, they're not getting paid if they can't pillage anything.
Oh, yeah.
So they start to desert because they're like, this is stupid. I'm not even from here and I don't get anything if we win. I'm out. And Christian realizes he can't actually take Stockholm. So he never is able to take the capital, so he can't really win the war. Between the raids, the guerrilla warfare, his guys deserting, and it's really just not worth it. He's got all the land he wants. He says, all right, this is not going anywhere, and I'm really sick of it. James the First, the sixth and first, that guy, this friggin' guy, he says, I say, would you mind not doing that? I'm trying to be a kingmaker over here. I don't know why he's English. He's Scottish. James the First is Scottish.
But either way, what's he butting in for?
Well, because that was like England tried to do that a lot. They tried to. It goes back to Henry, the Lion in Winter. The guy would storm around and be like, "All right, I'm here and I'm in charge." And everyone's like, "Okay." They're trying to be like, if you're the guy who everybody goes to as the arbiter of the disputes, you're a big deal.
Yeah.
So he's trying to, well, let's have some peace, why don't we? We're all peaceful Protestant types here, Christian nations.
A religion of peace, yes.
We're famous for our peacefulness,
That's
and
right.
maybe we shouldn't be killing each other. Maybe. Just a thought. Gustavus goes, that's a
how about
really
we
good
don't
point.
kill each other? Right.
We're all Christians.
What have we been
Your
doing?
name is Christian. Maybe be a Christian. Stop killing my people, and that'll stop raiding. And Christian says, "Yeah, that's fine. And plus, I can't take Stockholm, so
So it works.
Truce. Okay. Everybody's happy. All right, great. I'm going back to England where I am totally the greatest king and no one ever has a problem with me.
Great. Thanks, Jimmy 16.
Yep. Jimmy 16. Jimmy 16. Where's the camera? 16. That's me. I'm famous. Hashtag blessed.
Get out of here. Thanks for stopping by.
Thanks for stopping by, Jim. And he goes back to England. And Scotland and Ireland.
Yeah, okay. It stops the war.
It stops the war.
Nice.
Hooray. So we've got one down. That's just 1613. So that's just 2 years in. Now we have Russia. Russia's insane.
Yeah.
Russia's going through what's called the Time of Troubles. The Time of Troubles is just this, well, it's troublesome. And that deserves its whole own episode, so we'll go into details then. Okay. But basically, there isn't a fixed czar. There are people pretending to be the czar. There's imposters saying, I'm Dmitry II, and I'm totally in charge of Russia. Oh, man. And like, you don't even sound Russian. And he's like,
I'm Dmitry II.
No, you're not Dmitry II. I know Dmitry II, and you don't look a thing like him.
I have a mustache now.
You never, what?
I don't
that
have
is a that is a fake mustache. Yet you are not. You are not Dmitry II.
No.
So this is seen as a chance for a bunch of people to claim a bunch of land.
Yeah.
Specifically, Poland. King Sigismund III.
Yeah.
Gustavus's cousin is like, I want that.
Let's go get some.
Claim this.
Russian action.
He buys into the dynastic struggles and these pretenders to the throne, and he backs one of them. Oh. He doesn't outright invade, but he's like, yeah, I'll give you some money and I'll give you some troops. Yay. Meanwhile, a bunch of people in like Novgorod and in Moscow say, hey, Sweden, do you mind helping us out? We'll give you land. We'll give you this cool fortress on the border.
Ooh.
And Gustavus is like, well, he's not running the things at the time, but so I should say Charles is like, yeah, border fortress sounds great.
Okay.
Cool.
So this is still all Charles is doing.
Charles started this. Charles was in charge, and then he died.
Yeah.
Put Gustavus in a really unfortunate position. Luckily, this kid is smart. So he's during this war, a mercenary contingent gets sent over under what is the fellow's name? Jacob de la Gardie.
Oh.
It's probably like a Jacob.
Yeah, Jacob.
It's northern. So, but it's de la Gardie. So he could have a Frenchish sounding or Italian sounding name. I should have done a little more research under him. But he's a mercenary leader, and he's a Swedish guy. He's an important guy. He's a statesman. He sees a chance of making a name for himself, getting some land, getting some money. That's always a good thing. Builds a mercenary company. His guys are really loyal to him. And they go over there as part of like an intervention force to help out Russia. They fight the Poles, and the battle does not go well, and the Poles win. The Swedes are forced to surrender, and then they stay in the region, though. Like, their military unit stays in the region and kind of bounces around. And then while Poland is trying to exert authority, the Muscovites rise up against them and kick them out under a fellow named Mikhail Romanov. I don't know if you know the name Romanov.
I've heard Romanov, yeah.
Well, they're not a powerhouse yet. But the Romanov dynasty starts with this guy.
It's got to start somewhere.
So this is a huge event for Russia that the Romanovs unite under Mikhail, and Mikhail Romanov rises up and becomes the Tsar. Yay! Now, the original agreement with Sweden was that we would like either Gustavus or his brother Carl Philip. Carl. Yeah. Come on, you got Gustavus, and they're like, we used the good name.
Is it at least with a K?
Jeez. No, it's not even with a K. It's a
Carl.
C, Carl. Hi, Carl.
Okay, we're not scared of you, Carl.
Carl! That kills people, Carl! Sorry, this is llamas in hats.
Oh, yeah.
It's hilarious. Wheels in hats.
Yeah.
Anyway,
yeah.
Great bit. YouTube it.
YouTube llamas in hats.
It's wonderful.
Carl.
Right. Anyway, so Carl, they say either Carl or Gustavus can run Russia. Well, Gustavus is fine with just Sweden. That's a kingdom. He's happy with that. But the opportunity to help his brother out, give him land, sure. It gives them a pretext to go in and help. And if they win, Carl gets the land, he runs Russia. That's great. If they lose, they don't lose really anything. Because they went in, they showed that they are an international power. They're able to intervene and help people out when asked. Maybe they get some land out of it. Worst case scenario, really nothing happens. There's some fighting, and that's okay. because that
It's
was
easier
gonna,
for them to say
that
for
was
the people
gonna-
on the ground.
that was going to happen anyway. And most of the guys on the ground are volunteer mercenaries.
Yeah,
this is
okay.
not a conscripted force.
Yeah,
So
I'm just
they're-
saying,
yeah.
worst case scenario.
Worst case
some
scenario, people die.
It's pretty bad for those
Yeah,
people.
for the people, especially the Russians, they're like, no matter what happens, this sucks. Okay, it doesn't matter if the Russians win, the Swedes win, or the Poles win. We still have to live here.
Yeah.
And we're dying like crazy. It's not okay.
He's not.
It's not okay. Also, Russia is cold. This sucks. And they're taking like the warmest spots in Russia, so they're just, really? You just leave us Siberia? You guys suck.
Oh man, who wants Siberia?
We can be in Siberia, and our neighbors are the Mongols. Great.
Perfect.
Great. They never invade. Wonderful.
Siberia should
Oh,
be
and there's
used,
the Tartars right there. They love us.
Siberia
This is wonderful.
should be used for cold storage and nothing else. The cold-
Which the Russians eventually do, but with people.
Yikes.
That's what the gulags are. Anyway, moving forward, Gustavus sees this situation not as necessarily a loss, but as another opportunity. Because now that Poland's out of the deal, and he's already got troops in Russia, may as well.
Might as well attack Russia.
Yep.
Okay.
So they basically switch sides, and the Swedes try to take over Russia.
Okay.
So it's like, wait, we asked you to help us, now you're killing us. This is bullshit. I swore, sorry.
that's
That's
okay.
the first time we'll swear is with the S word. It's a PG-13 episode, kids.
That's a BS word.
It's a BS word. Sorry.
fine.
But they're furious,
Sure.
and there's all this fighting that goes on. But what's wild is the Russians ask the Swedes to stay. Like, a bunch of the Russians are like, you want to stay here? Novgorod, which is a major city, asks Jakob to stay there
Well,
and rule. So
just like the cut
so
of their
it's,
jib.
it's weird. Well, they're so used to the troubles and the chaos.
Oh,
they
sure.
see
At least-
stability.
At least you're decisive.
Oh my God! Just give us some stability, a stable government, a solid ruler, and Mikhail's untested at this point. They don't know that he's going to be like a reliable czar.
Okay.
These guys live. Some of these people are still living in fear from Ivan the Terrible, and who was terrible.
Yeah.
And very effective.
Okay.
But
So
terrible.
they want consistency.
They want consistencies. They want to know that they're not just going to get raided and murdered and destroyed. So they ask the Swedes to stay in some places, and the Swedes do. By the end of this, in now it's 1617, they have a treaty that ends the war. Another big part of this, like the reason why a lot of the Swedish guys stay and fight, is they're peeved that they weren't paid. The mercenaries that fought under Jakob, his entire mercenary company, was promised land and food and all this stuff, and they never got it.
You gotta pay your people.
You've got to pay, especially mercenaries.
Especially people
These
with
guys
knives.
are killers. Like, that is all they do, and they are, if they're still alive and have been doing it a while, exceptionally good at it. So you've got this trained mercenary fighting force in your land, and then you're like, well, we just can't pay you because chaos.
Can't you?
And then they say, well, then we're going to take it out of your hide.
Let us help you find your wallet there, buddy.
Pick him up by his feet, shake him, shake him.
Oh, you do have money.
Seems you have money.
That's funny.
But yeah, so that's why a lot of the mercenaries stay there. It's ostensibly to put Karl on the throne. Karl.
King Karl.
King Karl. Tsar Karl. Zarl. Ugh. You dodged a bullet, Rush.
Yeah.
Much better. Mikhail Romanov
Oh, man.
or Karl.
Russia would be totally different if their leader was named Karl.
Tsar Karl. Hey, everybody, welcome to Russia. I'm Tsar Karl.
Right.
Lame. But no, they got Mikhail Romanov. I imagine huge mustache, tough as nails, standing bare-chested in the snow. I fight all of you, one-on-one.
God, Karl.
Yeah. Punches Karl in the face. Goodbye, Karl.
Did they have glasses back then? They didn't have
Oh yeah,
glasses, did
they had spectacles. Yep. Yeah, they would be experimental, not very common.
I'll look up the history of glasses.
History of glasses. That's a future episode. Whoop. Future This Week in History. First recorded spectacles.
Well, because the bifocals was Ben Franklin.
Ben Franklin,
right?
yep.
But they had glasses.
But they had spectacles and glasses. They started experimenting it, I think, as far back as like Galileo and during the
Imagine,
Renaissance.
as soon as lenses got figured out.
I think in the Middle East and different parts too. Like I I'm sure, like probably in Baghdad, they probably had glasses in the 4th century because they were doing optics back then.
Yeah, I'll look it up later.
Yeah, we'll look it up. It's cool. So they solve this situation with Russia in 1617. They have a treaty. Sweden gets Novgorod because they were like, yeah, we want you to stay here, and they get a huge chunk of other territory.
Oh, all right.
Good job, Sweden.
Now, what's that now? Where is that now?
That's
is it Poland now,
or
is it
Novgorod's in Russia?
in Russia again?
I think it's back to being Russia because they lose this territory for like another 100 years, and then Peter the Great shows up, and he's like, "All right, everything we lost,
Give it back.
getting back."
All right.
I'm tired of this status quo of everybody beats us up. Time for Russia to take our land back. Peter the Great was pretty great.
Sure.
And then he was followed not much longer after by Catherine the Great, who was also great. Lots of greatness in Russia.
By their own names.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. According to them. Well, it's usually the generation after who determines if you're great.
Oh,
like
sure.
Gustavus Adolphus gets called the Great eventually.
Oh, nice.
Not during his lifetime.
All right.
The guys after him go, that guy was great.
That's pretty great.
It's pretty great.
Right.
So Gustavus is smart. He's ending things on their best. One little thing I forgot to mention is when he had his war with Denmark and Norway, he got a nice little thing out of the deal. When they had their peace treaty with Norway and Denmark, they had to pay a massive indemnity to get their conquered fortresses and a bunch of land back. So they got their stuff back.
Yeah.
And also, Christian needed money again because he's like,
Again?
I spent all this money going to war and paying these mercenaries, and now I got to pay off the mercenaries so they don't kill all my people.
Yeah.
And a large portion of his income is based off of like royal taxes and trade. So he typically has like a big pile of money, but once he spends it, it takes a long time to get it back.
Oh, yeah.
So he needs all his money back basically from this war. He gets it back, but Gustavus also gets free trade agreement. His guys do not have to pay tolls with Norway and Denmark to trade. So that's a nice bit of forethought for him that, okay, we'll stop all the fighting, but trade's important.
Trade's important.
And this helps him build up his own war chest and rebuild his own country, which is wonderful, great thinking. Now that they also have Novgorod, which is a very wealthy city, and all this new land, that's great. They have 4 periods of open warfare with Poland now that they have to deal with.
Poland?
And that's because Sigismund is a jerk.
Yeah, okay.
I didn't want to take down every time they have a treaty, but it's like 2-year spats of war, not war, war, not war, war, not war, war, not war, not war.
And neither side can really seal the deal.
It's got to be the most exhausting thing ever because you're fighting with your cousin.
Yeah.
Right? And these people are like, okay, enough, stop. And both sides have other things they'd rather be doing. Except Sigismund is really hung up on, I should be ruling Sweden. It's my kingdom.
Yeah, man, but you're
Yeah, but
never
not
around,
even here.
man.
You're not even here. They're both from...
We like our new dad.
Yeah, they're both from this very powerful house, the House of Vasa. V-A-S-A, Vasa. And that is still to this day like a big name. Like that's a big deal name, the House of Vasa. They were the kings. And Sigismund is also very proud that he's the first Polish Vasa king. So it's a big deal for him. And they immediately are like, nope, no Poles. Not really, but they're like, dude, if you want to rule Sweden, you have to live in Sweden.
Yeah.
Come on now. Don't be...
You got to live in the district that you rule.
And it's really funny is that he comes after... We talked about Jadwiga, the queen of Poland, who had to live in Poland or the Poles wouldn't accept her as their leader. They're like, the Poles are hardcore about you live here or you're not running the show.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So he's like, well, Sweden should just tolerate me. He's like, no, you live in... Yeah. Dude, you got to live where you... You can't run for an election and not live there. You lose. Historically. People hate that. And understandably. Like, how do you know what the people want? Do you even speak the language? Do you understand the culture and the customs?
At least show up at a parade every so often.
He doesn't even do that. He doesn't even send proxies. He's just like, give me money.
Yeah, okay.
The only person in history that I have found that this has ever worked for and people backed for no reason is Richard the Lionheart.
Oh.
He spent 6 months in England of his entire reign and just saw it as a tax revenue.
Nice.
And he taxed the hell out of England to go on crusade. But they're like, well, he's fighting for God, so it's great.
He is
He
still
didn't
doing
even speak English.
Oh, yeah.
He spoke French. So he hated England. But Somehow, they love him.
Okay.
But yeah, everywhere else in Europe, they're like, no, you don't live here.
Yeah.
Dude, you don't
That
even
makes
go
sense.
here.
Yeah, this is not near your school, man.
It's not even your school, man. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Oh, once again, coffee today brought to us by Lock, Stock, and Bagel. Love you guys. Thank you so
Not
much.
a sponsor.
You should maybe reach out to them. I don't know how to do that. I'll talk to them. We'll plug them in our
Yeah.
5-person watching
sure
show.
it'll work.
It'll help.
Yeah.
Maybe they'll give us a free coffee. That'd be great. Anyway, so Gustavus is he's learning this entire time. He's learning what battlefield tactics work, how to maneuver with small amount of troops, because he could tax his people and make a big army and fight in Poland and maybe win. But largely he's basing this off of small, quick-moving armies of a few thousand troops instead of tens of thousands, moving all over the place, fighting when they have to, and they're very well trained. He's a big believer in that. He also starts to develop ideas about artillery. Artillery is not just for siege work anymore. He thinks...
Not just for siege work anymore. Use it at home.
Use it at home. Take your cannon with you everywhere. Put wheels on it.
Ooh, yeah.
Because at this time, so we're in the... breaking into the modern warfare concept. Field artillery is not a thing yet.
Oh.
Gustavus Adolphus is a huge believer that it could be.
Oh, so it was like
should be.
It was like defensive. Keep it at home.
Yep. You'd make like a fortified encampment and you'd have cannon there, or if you were attacking a castle because it's not moving.
Yeah.
This guy's like, what if we move it?
So at some point, someone was trying to move a cannon around the castle. I was like, "This is a pain. Let's put some wheels on it."
Let's put some wheels.
Hey,
or
with wheels on it. We
he
can go
starts
farther.
saying, that army has a huge block of soldiers just sitting there, and a bullet can rip through a guy.
Sure.
No problem. Well, cannon's just a big gun.
Yep.
What if we pointed that at those guys and it just would go through them? They're a real big target.
Yeah.
You just shoot them all from really far away, and then when we're done shooting them, we move the cannon and shoot the other guys. And then when this battle's done, we hitch them up to horses and we just drag them off the field and we go to the next place and we shoot more guys.
Perfect.
And everyone goes, is so crazy. It just might work. And it does.
Yeah.
So he's starting to use this tactic.
Oh, was he the first one to invent this?
Gustavus Adolphus he has the title of the father of modern warfare.
Oh.
It's not necessarily that he was the first guy to do it
Yeah.
or the best guy at it.
Right.
He's the most famous guy to do it.
Okay.
And he was in the position of power to make it commonplace with his people.
Yes.
So everybody's doing different experiments, seeing what works.
Sure. Fun new toys.
Yeah, and we're going to talk quickly about like how war is fought now. So this is very similar to what we saw in like the English Civil War and other wars where it's pikemen, lots of spears,
Yep.
and then you have interspersed with the pikemen, you have guys with guns. This is called a tercio. The Spanish came up with this system. And you're talking about a block that's like 50 guys across and then 50 guys deep. So it's a square of 250 dudes that just fight.
Okay.
Pretty nasty. Oliver Cromwell talked about this with the New Model Army he starts to do later on. This is a creating principle behind this. Of blocks of dudes, guns in it, or crossbows, depending on what they're equipped with or what time of the warfare it is. So it's just guns.
Guns.
Now.
Just guns. All right.
Guns. And then you have cavalry as support and maybe some artillery. Usually the blocks are really big and they have to slowly move across the field, and the goal is they get there in the middle and then they poke each other to death.
Okay. Fun. Like a chessboard.
Yes. Maurice of Nassau, who's he's like a Dutch. He's a Dutch guy.
Okay.
That part of the world is very hard to put 50 guys on a plot of swampy land.
Yeah.
Or 250 guys in a big block. But if you stretch the line out to be 5 guys deep instead of 50 guys deep, it's much longer. And if you give them more guns than sticks, less guys can be more effective.
Right.
So that's a big thing that Maurice of Nassau is doing at the same time. And Gustavus starts to adopt this concept of less guys in a big clump, more spread out, more guns facing the enemy, shooting.
Yeah.
Also, he believes in combined arms. So not just infantry or artillery or cavalry, mixing the three together.
Oh.
And equality and equity of force. So he doesn't believe the cavalry is more important, the artillery is more important, or the infantry are more important. They're all equally important to make the machine go. Almost every other person in military history believes, up to this point, that a certain part of the battlefield is more important.
Right.
Back in like Alexander's day, the hoplite formation was vital to his survival. That was his big war game thing, and then his cavalry could charge, and that was important. Like that could make or break. Then you have the medieval knights. They are considered the most important part of the battlefield, even though the infantry have to do just as much fighting. And now we have like artillery added to it. They're a minor thing that is used for siege work. Gustavus feels if we mix the three together perfectly in unison and have them work together and learn each other's jobs too, then we have a much more efficient force. So he starts training all of his pikemen to use a gun, just in case the gunner dies. Then you have another guy who can pick the gun up and be just as useful. Or they at least, like, if they're in a situation where they have to change weapons, they know how to use it. Might not be as good. And then the gunners, in turn, learn how to use pikes. People learn how to ride horses that are not usually familiar with riding horses.
They got to train the horses not to be scared of guns.
Yes, that actually is a huge part of...
Seems like a big problem.
Yeah, war horses are very different than riding horses.
Okay.
War horses are trained, you ride them around and you shoot stuff.
Yeah.
And you get them used to it. They would light bales of hay on fire to make the smoke.
Oh.
So the horses would get used to smoke while training.
So
This is a big part. Training the horse was as important as training the rider.
I've been on a horse that got scared of a leaf.
Yeah. Horses are skittish by nature. They're a prey animal. So they're like, huh.
Yeah.
We'll just have, run. Because don't know for the common viewer, horses are very fast. They're designed to run away.
Run away.
Not towards danger.
All right.
So if something scares them, they 9 times out of 10 bolt.
So now we've been training these war horses.
Train them how to fight. So this is very different than like a knight's war horse, which is giant. Like they measure by hands. A knight's war horse was like 22 hands high, and they're the size of a draft horse. They're huge, like a Clydesdale. Yeah. But fast enough to charge in battle and carry a big guy in full armor with weapons and all this other stuff. Yeah. The training required for that is different than a guy who's wearing maybe less armor, riding around with guns, firing while he's on horseback.
Right.
Because they would do a technique called the caracole, which is you would ride forward with your pistol, and you'd kind of ride in front of the formation, and you'd shoot. And then you'd ride off to the back, and you'd reload as you go. Oh. And they would do this with the entire formation. Eventually, they started doing a circular thing, almost like a carousel. Where boom, boom, boom. As I ride up, I shoot, I shoot, I shoot. Cavalry archers did this too. So this is
where the carousel came from?
I don't think so.
Where they have horses on them, you go in a circle?
Probably.
Okay.
It's probably some horrible. It's kind of the ring
horrible origin.
It all comes from some horrible origin.
God. All right. Look that up too.
Look that up. Well, that's how the Mongols used to do warfare, except they shot inwards because their hunting technique was make a circle around a chunk of woods and then close the circle in and kill everything inside of it. That's how they waged war. That's so terrifying. That's how the Finns fought in the Winter War too. They surrounded chunks of soldiers and they just close it in.
What's for dinner? Whatever's on the inside of this circle.
Whatever's in the circle. It's just bunnies. Bunnies is good. Bunnies is good. Bunnies. Did we find people? Yeah, well, we're not going to eat them. Did you kill them at least? Yeah, okay, cool. So as long as we killed something, it's good. So the caracole is a thing that's being developed at this point. Or what they would more commonly do is the horses were trained, they'd gallop full speed towards the enemy, and you'd shoot before you charge. Oh. So they have this big pistol which shoots a round that's like a 75 caliber round and blast it into some poor fool. He's dead or just on the ground. And then the guy next to him's going, oh my God! And then they start hacking and cleaving. Meanwhile, the horsemen are wearing a breastplate and what's called a buff coat, which is a long leather jacket. Protects against almost every kind of slashing, unless it's really, really got some oomph behind it. And this is in the north, so they use like moose hide and elk. So this is the heavy leather stuff. This is not, it's leather. It's leather.
Moose leather.
Moose leather. So this is what he's learning during his warfare in other countries, and he begins to build his army around this. Gustavus has really learned a lot. So finally in 1629, after years and years and years of on and off fighting with Poland, he ends the war in Poland.
He ends it.
The Poles lose and give up Livonia, which is a huge chunk of Estonia and Latvia, modern day. So one of the first things Gustavus does when he takes over this land is he says, I want schools there.
Oh.
I wish for the people to be educated.
Well,
the University of Tartu, which is in Estonia, was founded by Gustavus Adolphus.
What were we even fighting for? This guy's nice.
Actually, there's a phrase apparently in Estonia where they call it the good old Swedish days. Because after this, they get conquered by Russia, and Tsarist Russia was not nice. So they're like, oh, God, can we go back to when the nice guy on the horse from Sweden conquered us?
You remember
and
that?
he made a school, as opposed to Tsarist Russia, where they just start murdering everybody, and then we get to deal with the Bolshevik rebellions and everything, and Lenin and
go back to school.
Stalin. Oh, God. Sweden seems so nice by comparison. He burned so much less. Because he learned, it seems like Gustavus learned lessons from his early war with Denmark, where they burned a bunch of stuff and killed a bunch of villagers and things like that.
Yeah.
That was an act of necessity, it seems like, where it's like, they're in my land and I have no way of fighting them. I'm going to hit them in their economy and I'm going to do what I can. He stopped doing that as much later on, where he had more of a controlled military unit, because looting is a sign of like disorganization.
Right. It's like a last resort sort of
Yeah.
thing.
If you guys are off looting, they're not marching, they're not doing what they're supposed to be doing. They're focused on getting money and women and whatever else they want, because rape was a very common thing for soldiers back then. They did that all the time. It was awful. And this is a part of warfare now where we're getting into what's called total warfare. Everybody's involved. The villages are burned. Farms are destroyed. Normally in like medieval warfare, that's not a thing. You maybe raid a village, but you don't destroy the farmland because you need it. You want it.
They're doing everybody. Right.
In the 30 Years' War, now we've talked about this with the Peace of Westphalia, so that's its own thing.
Yep.
We're seeing a fight. Originally, it's between different factions of German nobility. The empire is ruled by Catholics, and they turn it into a religious war. It's between Catholics and Protestants.
Okay.
It is also a secular war because it's, again, all about the control.
Right.
These are all Christians, but they have different ideas, and it becomes about self-rule. The Catholic thinking is if the king is Catholic, everybody's Catholic. The Protestant thinking was whatever city wants to be whatever it wants to be, that's the rule. Not everybody within the city gets to be what they want to be, but if you're Catholic here and that city's Protestant, you go to the Catholic city. And that's fine. Now things have changed, and the Protestants are not as well funded, not as well equipped, and they're getting their butts kicked in Germany. In the first battle with the Catholics, they get crushed at the Battle of White Mountain. It's not great. They're overrun, and they're kind of like bounce between feckless leaders within Germany who aren't really competent, who aren't as skilled in leadership, and they're more focused about, it seems like they don't have a direction. They're not really focused at all. Some of them want peace. Some of them think that it's time for the Protestants to take over. Some of them want to fall back under the emperor and be like, no, we're all Germans here, it's fine. But then the rest of Europe starts to get involved. They start to pour in troops. The Spanish especially.
Spanish?
Oh, yeah.
From out of nowhere.
The House of Habsburg has control in both places. Okay. Habsburg is a German and Austrian house, but also rules Spain. They're a Catholic empire. Charles V, we're going to do a whole episode on him because this guy has been everywhere. He affects England, he affects France, he affects Germany, he affects Russia by extension, he affects Sweden, and he affects what they call the New World. So he's a big mover and shaker. The House of Habsburg, it has a vested interest. So they start sending Spanish troops to help. This is also tied into Spain's war in the Netherlands and all kinds of madness happening throughout all of Europe. Europe basically is at constant warfare right now. The whole continent is on fire.
Fun.
Everybody's fighting. James in England keeps offering to help different people, specifically the Protestants, and never delivers. So all of these guys are like, oh yeah, James is going to show up. He's going to save us. I'm a bit busy.
All right.
I'm ruling my island. you guys, let's
Yeah.
talk it out. And
But
they're
he
like,
keeps
we're not talking it
he
out.
keeps promising. Yeah.
Yep, and he does keep promising. He marries his daughter to one of the leaders of the Protestant side, and they're like, yeah, now that I'm married to his daughter, he's going to send this big army. And it's like, England doesn't have this big army to send. They have their own problems, so you're just buying into this belief. But now, a different king has totally freed up his army and has a new way of thinking, and he wants to try it out. Gustavus Adolphus is married to a German woman. He believes very strongly that Protestants should be able to practice their faith freely, and he doesn't like the Germans fighting and beating each other up and crushing the Protestant beliefs. He's pushed by a sense of religious responsibility, enlightened principles of being kind of this benevolent king. He's also a warrior who's learned a lot. And he's like, well, like they're asking me for help. I can't not help them.
Yeah.
Because the Protestants go, our leaders suck, dude. Can you come and help? And he's, sure, I'll show up. He shows up with 4,000 men.
Okay.
These are armies of 50,000,
Yeah.
100,000. His army is very small. But he starts building up. So he's got this elite corps of his trained guys and his new principles of modern warfare. Mobile artillery, which he is perfecting. He's like getting involved in the different ways they make cannon and all this other stuff. In an earlier battle in 1627, while fighting, because he liked to lead the cavalry charge, this is not a, I'm going to sit on this hill and fight. He says, I'm going to charge in like my Viking ancestors and kill somebody with an axe. I don't have an axe. Sword. I'll use my sword.
Okay, here I go.
Okay, here we go. Charging in and killing these guys.
And the one and the two.
In 1627, he got shot, like above the collarbone, and it wrecked him. It was the right side because he lost feeling in 2 fingers in his right hand.
Oh no!
So it did some permanent damage.
Yeah.
And this is a time where surgery is not great, so they left the bullet in.
Ooh.
Fortunately, because of where it was lodged, he couldn't wear a breastplate anymore.
Oh.
Because it would rub against this bullet
Yeah, that sounds
lodged
painful.
in his body, which is probably incredibly painful.
Yeah.
And risks pushing the bullet around, right?
Yeah.
So he stopped wearing armor. He
Okay.
just wore the moose skin leather coat.
Well, this will probably work out fine for him.
Yeah, it's fine. So this is the Chekhov's gun kind of a thing. Where it's like,
yes, go ahead.
going to hang a lantern on a deficiency here. At some point, he's building his armies up, and he gets the Protestants to unite and follow him. And at the Battle of Breitenfeld, it is the first Protestant win of the war, and that's 17 September 1631. So this war started in 1618. They haven't had a win yet, and they had to get a Swedish king to come in and save the day. And it is a really one-sided thing. The armies are almost equal, but Gustavus brought more cannon.
Okay.
His losses are 5,000, which is still a lot out of about 40,000.
That's a lot, yeah.
The other side loses 15,000.
Oh, that's more.
So it's significantly more.
We've got bigger guns.
We've got bigger guns, and that's what it turns into is we have bigger guns.
Okay.
But we're seeing that even though this is considered a major victory, he still lost 5,000 guys.
Yeah.
That's not like the crushing defeats like we just talked about with the Winter War, where it's like it's a 5-1 and they're destroying everything and they just charge into the teeth of the guns. This is the lethality of this warfare because it's so close, and the damage caused by these weapons is fatal almost every time because you don't have modern medicine.
Yeah.
Which causes a problem for him later. A year later, at and also I have a picture of the Battle of Breitenfeld from 1632, Bing. Made from a contemporary. So there's Gustavus on his horse commanding. It's actually way too romantic of a picture because this guy was probably covered in blood and charging into the fray. He also wouldn't have worn a breastplate because this is after that.
Thank goodness we didn't have cameras.
Yep. So at the Battle of Lutzen in 16 November 1632, it is another brilliant Protestant victory. Great strategy. Gustavus's tactics work. Unfortunately, in the fog of war, surrounded by gun smoke and cut off from his retinue, Gustavus is surrounded and shot.
Oh, no, Gustavus.
Had he worn a breastplate, it is thought he would have lived.
Okay.
Because it was like the one hit, a vital spot.
Sure.
If he'd been wearing a breastplate, if he'd had surgery to remove that bullet, he would have been fine.
If only. Sure.
So Gustavus Adolphus dies 1632. He's not even 40.
Not even 40. Well,
Not even 40. But during his lifetime, he practically like doubles the size of Sweden. He makes it not just like a little local power. It was already on the rise, but it is considered like it's an empire. It is now the Swedish Empire. He has made it this respected, powerful nation with a mighty military that lasts for quite a while. For a century after his death, it remains a powerful force. Nowadays, we just think of Sweden as this kind of quaint,
yeah, they're
nice country,
Yeah.
neutral. But this was the height of Swedish power, and it was a force to be reckoned with. It was a global power.
Yeah.
If he had lived another 30 years, there's no knowing what he could have done, because his reformations, as far as administrative side of things, were brilliant. His military skill was unmatched at the time. And these, in 2 battles, he completely switched the war. And it went on for another 16 years after his death because of what he did. It's almost unfortunate that he showed up when he did, and only for so long, because had he died or never been involved, that war might have wrapped up sooner.
Oh. He
Because
prolonged
the
it with
Protestants
technology.
never would have bounced back. So he's the only Swede that is called the Great after he died.
Okay.
He's Gustav the Great. He was praised as the father of modern warfare. Napoleon respected him, thought he was like the greatest general of all time. Patton,
Ooh.
George Patton, and Karl von Clausewitz. He gets to be called Karl because he's German.
Okay,
That's at
yeah,
least acceptable.
that's fine.
Who was a Prussian general, and he wrote one of the, I don't remember the name of it, but it was like the military treatise of his time. It was like, this is how to soldier in the 1800s. So he's the reason like why Prussia became like a military powerhouse under Bismarck. He's a big deal. All of these great leaders considered him like the greatest military mind up to that point, because he took all the different types of military things and made them work. But also he's a great king because he was good to his people. He actually put the people forward and not just in name. Like, he was off fighting in these other wars, but he didn't have this, I force you to go fight my wars. He did have volunteer military. He had conscript military, but he led from the front. He made sure they were okay. But he also secured trade deals. He made centers for administration work more efficiently. He built schools. He focused on rebuilding agriculture because Sweden needed the work after previous wars. He is called the Lion of the North, and also Der Loa aus Mitternacht, which means the Lion of Midnight.
Ooh, that's
in Germany.
exciting.
That's a cool name.
Cool.
So that is the great Gustavus Adolphus of Sweden.
Well,
Oh, and he's got the Gustavus Adolphus bread is a dessert in Finland.
Oh.
Because Finland was part of Sweden, and I never would have known that if I hadn't studied the Winter War and
I'll have
delved
to
into it.
give it a-
So I have to give that one a whirl.
Yeah.
They have a celebration for him in Finland. They have like Gustavus Adolphus Day. He's in a video game. He's in the Civilization franchise. He's hugely famous, and he's honestly probably just like my favorite king.
Well, there
He's
you
just
go.
a pretty darn good king. I wish he would have lived longer. Oh, one last thing. There's an awesome book. I think it's called like 1630 or 1631. And the idea of it is a West Virginia town, for some reason, ends up transported back to the 30 Years' War.
okay.
And so it's a bunch of like Americans going with like guns and stuff from like the 1980s going, oh crap, what's going on? And they have to like survive in Germany. But during this, they meet. And it's supposed to be like an alternate history kind of a thing.
Yeah.
They have to adapt. They make a huge impact with just a small amount of people with modern technology and ideas. But they eventually meet Gustavus Adolphus Rex, who fights under a pseudonym, Captain Gar, G-A-R, Gustavus Adolphus
Okay.
Rex. And he's considered a madman by his advisors, and he's great. He's this very wonderful character. And they realize he's got this bullet in him, and they, knowing history, go, oh God, he dies at this battle. Let's do surgery and get the bullet out, and he'll wear a cuirass and protect himself, and it completely changes history. It's a fantastic book series.
Well, there we go. The
Sure,
actual
fine.
history of Gustavus, and then a little bonus fictional
A little bonus
history.
fictional history, which is amazing.
All right. Well, thank you. Well,
Thank you, Mike.
that was the life and death of Gustavus Adolphus. If you have any corrections or comments, please put those in the thing.
Yep.
And like and subscribe. And
Like,
do all that
subscribe,
stuff.
share it, tell all your friends about it.
Support us on Patreon and tell all your people about it.
Yeah.
We will be back again next week discussing another person from history. We're discussing Simon Bolivar.
See.
And was that South America?
South America. Bolivia.
Bolivia. Well, there we go. But that'll be next week in history. Thanks for this week, Will.
You're welcome,
We'll
Mike.
see you later.
Bye, guys.
Goodbye.